My wife cheated on me with my best friend for 6 months, then lied again when I caught them at a hotel. Hey, everyone, I need some advice and clarity because I still can't wrap my head around what's happened. My name's Mike, and I'm a 35-year-old guy who thought he had it all figured out. A loving wife, stable job, and a peaceful suburban life. My wife, Emma, and I have been together for 10 years. We don't have kids. Never really got around to it, but we've shared a lot of great moments. At least, I thought we did. Recently, things haven't felt right. It's hard to explain, but Emma's behavior started changing in subtle ways. She was still affectionate, still said all the right things, but there was something off. I brushed it off as her being stressed from work, since she just got promoted at her firm. But then there was this one incident that sparked a suspicion in me I didn't know I was capable of having. We were at a friend's barbecue a few weeks ago, and I noticed she spent a lot of time talking to this guy, Chad. Yeah, I know, a classic name for a guy to worry about, right? But this guy wasn't some stranger. He was an old college friend of mine. We had drifted apart over the years, but Emma and he always got along. The way they interacted wasn't over the top or anything, but there were these little things, how she laughed just a little too hard at his jokes, how he seemed to always be where she was, even though the barbecue was packed with people. I'm not one to jump to conclusions, so I didn't say anything. But that night, when we got home, I asked her casually, "You seem pretty close with Chad tonight. Everything okay between you two?" Her reaction was way out of proportion. She got defensive, almost angry, saying I was being paranoid and that it was just a friendly catch-up. She even accused me of not trusting her. It left a sour taste in my mouth, but I apologized and dropped it, convincing myself I was overthinking things. After all, she'd never given me a reason to doubt her before, or so I thought. That was until I found something that changed everything. After that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. Emma's behavior continued to change in small, almost unnoticeable ways. She started working late more often, saying she had meetings that just couldn't be rescheduled. I tried to be supportive, even bringing her dinner a few times at the office, but she always insisted I didn't have to. "I'll grab something quick," she'd say, brushing off my offer. But one Friday evening, I decided to surprise her anyway. I picked up her favorite takeout and headed to her office. When I got there, I noticed her car wasn't in the parking lot. That was strange. If she was working late, where was she? I called her, and she picked up after a few rings. "Hey, Mike, what's up?" she asked, sounding a little breathless. "Hey, I thought I'd bring you some dinner," I replied, trying to sound cheerful. "But I'm at your office, and you're not here." There was a long pause before she answered. "Oh, I had to step out for a bit. Last-minute errand for work. I'll be back soon. Do you want me to wait?" I asked, feeling my heart rate pick up. No, it's fine. I'll be a while. Just head home, and I'll see you later." The unease in my chest grew, but I didn't push it. I drove home, my mind racing the entire way. That's when I decided I needed to find out what was really going on. I wasn't proud of it, but I logged into our shared phone account to check her call and text history. I almost wished I hadn't. There were dozens of calls and texts to a number I didn't recognize, more than to anyone else, even me. My hands shook as I copied the number and put it into a reverse lookup site. My stomach dropped when the name came up. It was Chad. That night, I confronted her about it, and she gave me the coldest, most calculated response I'd ever heard. "He's just a friend, Mike. You're being ridiculous." She walked away before I could say anything else, leaving me standing there in silence. That's when I realized I couldn't just let this go. I needed to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The next morning, I took a deep breath and decided to take a more direct approach. I reached out to Chad himself. I sent a simple message. "Hey, it's Mike. Got a minute to chat?" He responded almost immediately with a casual, "Sure, what's up?" I didn't want to come off as accusatory right away, so I started off lightly. "Just wanted to catch up. It's been a while since we talked. You and Emma seem to be getting along really well at the barbecue." There was a slight pause before he replied, "Yeah, she's great. We were just reminiscing about old times." Nothing serious, but something about his tone made my skin crawl. I could almost hear the smirk in his words. Gathering my courage, I decided to take it a step further. "I've noticed you two talk a lot. Is there something going on that I should know about?" He took his time responding, and when his reply finally came, it was vague. "Look, man, I think you're reading too much into it. Emma and I are just friends. If you're worried, maybe you should talk to her." Talk to her? That's exactly what I tried, but she was shutting me out at every turn. Frustrated, I ended the conversation and stared at my phone, feeling more lost than ever. If Chad wasn't going to give me answers, then I had to find them myself. That's when I came up with a plan. I decided to keep an eye on Emma's schedule. Whenever she said she'd be working late or going to meetings, I'd take note of it. Over the next 2 weeks, I made a habit of driving by her office when she claimed she was working. And every single time, her car was nowhere to be found. It was like she disappeared. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I waited until she left for one of her meetings and followed her, keeping a safe distance. She didn't head to her office. Instead, she drove straight to a small, out-of-the-way coffee shop downtown. I parked far enough away so she wouldn't see me, and I watched as she got out of the car and headed inside. A few minutes later, Chad pulled up and went inside as well. My heart pounded as I waited, struggling to breathe. Seeing them together in a place where they thought no one would notice was like a punch to the gut. I knew then that I couldn't confront them. Not yet. I needed solid proof. Something undeniable. It was time to take things to the next level. I spent the next few days planning my next move. I didn't want to jump to conclusions without solid evidence, so I did something I never thought I'd do. I bought a small GPS tracker. I felt guilty even considering it, but I needed to know the truth, no matter how painful it was going to be. One morning, when Emma was in the shower, I slipped the tracker under her car's rear bumper. My hands were shaking the entire time, but I managed to get it secured. Then I waited. That evening, Emma told me she was heading out for another late meeting. My pulse quickened, but I tried to act normal. "Okay, see you later," I said with a forced smile. As soon as she left, I pulled up the tracker's app on my phone. I watched the little dot move slowly across the map. She wasn't heading to her office. Instead, she took a turn and ended up at a hotel on the other side of town. My chest tightened as I stared at the screen, barely able to process what I was seeing. A hotel. I drove there, my mind racing. Parking a few spots away, I watched as Emma got out of her car and walked into the lobby. Not even 10 minutes later, Chad's car pulled up. He stepped out, looked around, and then disappeared into the hotel as well. I felt like my world was crumbling around me. My suspicions were no longer just paranoia. This was it. The undeniable proof I had dreaded finding. They were together at a hotel. My head spun with questions. How long had this been going on? How could she betray me like this? But I didn't go inside. I didn't want a dramatic confrontation. I just sat there in my car, staring blankly at the hotel entrance, trying to hold myself together. Eventually, I drove home, numb and broken. I knew I needed a plan for what to do next, but at that moment, all I could think about was the pain of betrayal and the love that had shattered before my eyes. The next morning, I made a decision. I needed to confront her, but not without preparing myself first. I gathered all the evidence. The GPS tracker logs, photos of her car at the hotel, and even the screenshots of her call history with Chad. I wanted everything laid out so there'd be no way for her to deny it. That evening, I waited for her to come home. When she finally walked through the door, I could barely look at her. My heart raced, but I forced myself to stay calm. Emma, we need to talk, I said, my voice steady but strained. She paused, sensing the seriousness in my tone. What's wrong, Mike? She asked, feigning concern. I took a deep breath and pulled out my phone, showing her the pictures of her car at the hotel. Her face turned pale. I know where you've been going, I said quietly. I know you've been meeting Chad. I followed you. Emma's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. I could see the panic in her eyes. Mike, it's not what you think. Don't lie to me. I cut her off, my voice rising. I've seen it with my own eyes. I have proof, Emma. Just tell me the truth for once. She stared at the photos, then at me, tears welling up in her eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered. It just happened. I didn't mean for it to go this far. My chest tightened, but I forced myself to keep going. How long? I asked through gritted teeth. How long have you been seeing him behind my back? Emma looked away, her shoulders shaking. 6 months, she admitted quietly. 6 months. Half a year of lies and deceit. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I nodded slowly, feeling strangely calm despite the storm raging inside me. Okay, I needed to hear it from you. Then I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there in silence. I had all the answers I needed. Now it was time to decide what to do next. After our confrontation, Emma tried to apologize, but I couldn't listen. I needed space. So I grabbed my keys and left the house, driving aimlessly until I ended up at a park we used to visit together. Sitting on a bench, I thought about everything, our past, our marriage, and all the years I'd trusted her blindly. How could she do this to me? I pulled out my phone and stared at Chad's number. Anger boiled inside me. I knew I had to confront him, too. I sent him a simple text. We need to talk. Now. He replied almost instantly. What's going on? I didn't bother explaining. Meet me at the park near my place in 30 minutes. When he showed up, he looked surprised and a little nervous. Hey, Mike, what's this about? I stood up, meeting his gaze. You know exactly what this is about, Chad, I said coldly. I know everything. You've been seeing Emma behind my back for 6 months. He shifted uncomfortably, trying to play it cool. Listen, man, it's not like that. Save it, I snapped, stepping closer. I don't want your excuses. I trusted you. You were supposed to be my friend. My voice shook with emotion, but I forced myself to stay composed. He glanced away, guilt written all over his face. I'm sorry, Mike. I didn't want it to happen like this. Didn't want it to happen? I repeated, laughing bitterly. You made a choice, Chad. You both did. Now I'm making mine. Stay away from me and from her. With that, I turned and walked away, leaving him speechless. For the first time in days, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I couldn't change what they'd done, but I could choose how I responded. I was done being the victim. It was time to take control of my life again, even if it meant letting go of everything I thought I knew. When I got back home, Emma was sitting at the kitchen table, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She looked up as I walked in, but I didn't say anything. I just grabbed a glass of water and sat down across from her. The silence was heavy, filled with everything left unsaid between us. Mike, please, she whispered, her voice breaking. I'm so sorry. I know I've hurt you, but I don't want to lose you. We can work through this, can't we? I stared at her, the pain still fresh, but there was also a sense of numbness. Why, Emma? I asked quietly. Why him? And why keep lying for so long? She wiped her eyes and took a shaky breath. I don't know, she said softly. It just started with a few texts, and then it got out of control. But I never wanted it to go this far. I felt like we were drifting apart, and Chad was just there. I shook my head slowly. So, what now? You expect me to just forgive and forget? No, she whispered, looking down at her hands. I don't expect anything, but I love you, Mike. I know I messed up, but I want to fix this. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Her words hung in the air, but I felt no comfort in them. I knew she was sincere, at least I hoped she was, but I couldn't ignore the betrayal. I need time, I said finally, standing up. I can't decide anything right now. Emma nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face again. I understand. Take all the time you need. Just please, don't give up on us. I didn't respond as I walked upstairs. I needed to be alone to figure out what I really wanted. Could I ever look at her the same way again? Or was our marriage already beyond repair? The next few days were a blur. I moved into the guest bedroom, trying to put some distance between us while I sorted out my thoughts. Emma gave me space, but I could feel her watching me, hoping for any sign that things might go back to normal. But I didn't know what normal was anymore. I took a few days off work and spent most of my time out of the house, at the gym, at parks, anywhere but home. I'd find myself staring at my phone, wondering if I should talk to someone about this. My family didn't know. Our friends didn't know. It felt too humiliating to admit what had happened. Eventually, I decided to call my best friend, Brian. He answered on the first ring. Mike, everything okay, man? You sound off. Brian, I need to tell you something. My voice trembled as I spoke. I told him everything. How I found out about Emma and Chad, what I'd seen, and how lost I felt. There was silence on the other end for a moment. I'm so sorry, man, he said finally, his voice filled with sympathy. I can't believe they'd do that to you. Do you want me to come over? We can talk more in person. No, I just needed to tell someone, I admitted. I'm not sure what to do. Take it one step at a time, he advised gently. You don't have to make any big decisions right now. But whatever you choose, just remember, it's okay to put yourself first. You deserve better. Hearing those words from someone else felt like a small weight lifting off my shoulders. Maybe he was right. Maybe I didn't have to rush into figuring everything out. I thanked him and hung up, feeling a little more grounded. It was time to start thinking about what I needed, not just what Emma wanted. Over the next week, Emma tried everything to win me back. She'd leave little notes apologizing, make my favorite meals, and even offered to go to counseling. But I stayed distant, unsure if I was ready to let her in again. I kept replaying everything in my head. How easily she'd lied, how long it had gone on. Could I ever really trust her again? One evening, she approached me cautiously. Mike, I've ended things with Chad. I blocked him everywhere, and I even told him not to contact me again. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to prove that I'm committed to you. I looked at her, searching for any sign of deceit. She seemed sincere, but I'd been fooled before. That's a start, I said slowly. But this isn't just about him, Emma. You chose to lie and betray me for 6 months. I can't just erase that. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she nodded. I know it's going to take a lot more than words. I'm not expecting you to forgive me right away, but I want you to know I'm serious about fixing this. Her desperation was palpable, but so was my lingering anger. I wanted to believe she meant it, but the scars were still fresh. We'll see, I said softly, turning away. That night, I sat alone in the guest room, thinking about everything she'd said. Part of me wanted to hold on to the anger, it felt safer. But another part of me wondered if there was any chance of rebuilding, if I could somehow find it in me to forgive. One thing was clear, though. I wasn't ready to give an answer yet. This would take time, if it was even possible at all. One afternoon, as I was scrolling through social media, I stumbled upon something unexpected. A mutual friend had posted pictures from a recent party, and there, in the background, I spotted Chad. He was laughing and holding a drink, but that wasn't what caught my attention. Standing next to him, smiling and looking relaxed, was Emma. My heart sank. The photos were from last weekend, after she'd claimed to have cut ties with him. Rage bubbled up inside me, as I stared at the screen. How could she lie again after everything? Without thinking, I called her. She picked up almost immediately. "Hey, Mike." "Emma, what the hell is this?" I snapped, sending her a screenshot of the photo. There was silence on the line as she opened it. "Mike, I swear it's not what it looks like. I didn't know he'd be there. I left right after that picture was taken. You expect me to believe that?" I shot back, my voice shaking. "After all the lies? You said you were done with him." "I am." "Please, I didn't talk to him. I only stayed for a few minutes," she pleaded, but I'd heard enough. My chest tightened as I realized the full extent of her deceit. "Emma, I don't think I can do this anymore," I whispered, the words tasting bitter. "You've betrayed me over and over. I'm done." Her sobs echoed through the phone, but I hung up, feeling strangely numb. I'd tried so hard to make it work, but this was the final straw. There was no going back. No more second chances. It was time to move on. The next day, I contacted a lawyer. It was the hardest call I've ever made, but I knew it was the only way forward. I explained everything from the affair to the broken promises, and by the end of the conversation, I felt a strange sense of relief. There was a plan now, something concrete that would help me regain control of my life. When I got home that evening, Emma was waiting for me. Her eyes were puffy from crying. "Mike, we need to talk," she whispered, her voice trembling. I stayed silent, letting her speak. "I know you're hurt, and I know I've messed up, but please don't do this. Don't throw away everything we've built. We can still save our marriage." She looked at me desperately, searching for any sign of hope. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Emma, it's not about throwing it away. You already did that when you chose to keep lying. I can't trust you anymore. There's no foundation left." She broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. "Please, Mike, I'll do anything. Counseling, therapy, whatever it takes. Just give us one more chance." My heart ached seeing her like that, but I forced myself to remain firm. "I'm filing for divorce," I said quietly, and her sobs turned into quiet, defeated gasps. "It's over, Emma." I walked past her, feeling the weight of the decision settle in. It was painful, but I knew it was the right choice. No more lies, no more betrayal. It was time to finally put myself first and start rebuilding my life without her. After I told Emma about the divorce, she moved into a separate room. The house felt emptier, even though we were still under the same roof. We hardly spoke. Every conversation was filled with tension or ended in tears. I threw myself into work and spent time with friends, anything to avoid going home and facing the mess our marriage had become. One evening, as I was packing up some of my things, Emma appeared at the door. "Mike, I need to say something," she began softly. I turned, bracing myself. "What is it, Emma?" She looked down, clutching a small box in her hands. "I found this," she whispered, opening it to reveal the engagement ring I'd given her over a decade ago. I took it off a while back when I started seeing Chad. I kept it hidden because I felt so guilty. I stared at the ring, memories flooding back. Our engagement, the happy years that followed, everything we used to be before it all fell apart. "Why are you showing me this now?" "Because I want you to know how much I regret everything," she said, tears glistening in her eyes. "I know I can't change the past, but I'm sorry, Mike. Truly, I never meant to hurt you like this." A bitter smile tugged at my lips. "Sorry won't fix anything now, Emma. It's too late." I turned away, feeling a familiar wave of sadness wash over me. "I know," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "But I needed you to know that I did love you, even if I lost sight of it." With that, she placed the ring back in the box and left the room. I watched her go, feeling a strange mixture of closure and heartbreak. It didn't change anything, but at least now I knew. The next few weeks passed in a blur. Emma and I continued living like strangers, carefully avoiding each other as we divided up our lives. I moved most of my things to a small apartment downtown. It wasn't much, but it felt like a fresh start, a place to figure out who I was without her. One day, while I was unpacking, my phone buzzed with a message. It was from Chad. I hesitated before opening it. Mike, I heard about the divorce. I just want to say I'm sorry for everything. I never meant for it to go this far. A surge of anger welled up inside me. He was sorry, after ruining my marriage and lying to my face? I almost deleted the message, but then something stopped me. Instead, I typed a response. It's done. I don't want to hear from you again. Don't contact me and stay out of my life. I hit send, then blocked his number, feeling a small sense of satisfaction. It wasn't much, but it was a step toward cutting out the toxicity they'd brought into my life. Later that evening, as I sat alone in my new living room, I thought about everything that had happened. Emma's apologies, Chad's half-hearted attempt at remorse. None of it mattered. What mattered was that I was finally taking control of my own happiness. I didn't know what the future held, but I was ready to start figuring it out, one step at a time. This was just the beginning of a new chapter, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope. As I settled into my new life, I focused on rebuilding myself. I reconnected with old friends, picked up new hobbies, and started working out more. It was strange being alone after so many years of marriage, but I slowly began to feel a sense of freedom I hadn't known I needed. One day, I got a call from Emma. I hesitated before answering, but curiosity got the better of me. "Mike, I just wanted to tell you I'm leaving town," she said softly. "I took a new job in another city. I think it's best if we have some distance." Her words surprised me. "Really? You're moving?" I asked, unsure how to feel. "Yes," she replied quietly. "I need to start over, too. This place has too many memories, good and bad. I hope you can find peace and happiness again. I really am sorry for everything." I took a deep breath, nodding even though she couldn't see me. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Emma. I mean it." There was a long silence on the line, then a quiet, "Thank you, Mike. Take care." With that, she hung up, and I stared at the phone, feeling a sense of finality wash over me. Emma was leaving, and so was the last tie that connected us. Maybe this was the real closure I needed to finally move on. I put the phone down and stepped out onto my balcony, feeling the cool breeze against my face. It was time to let go completely. Months passed, and life gradually began to feel normal again. The divorce was finalized, and I threw myself into new routines, new friendships, new goals. I found myself laughing more, genuinely enjoying moments without the weight of the past dragging me down. One afternoon, I got a message from an old mutual friend. He invited me to a small gathering saying, "You should come." It's been a while since we all got together. I hesitated, but decided to go. I wanted to prove to myself that I'd truly moved on. At the party, there were familiar faces and some new ones. As I chatted with people, I realized how much I'd changed. I was no longer the broken, betrayed man who was clinging to what was lost. I was someone stronger, someone who'd learned to value himself again. Toward the end of the evening, as I was about to leave, a woman I hadn't met before came up to me. "Hi, I'm Lauren," she said with a warm smile. "I've heard a lot about you." We started talking, and the conversation flowed naturally. There was no pressure, no expectations, just two people enjoying each other's company. As we exchanged numbers, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, genuine excitement. Driving home, I realized I was ready to open my heart again, even if it meant risking pain. I'd survived the worst, and now I could finally embrace the possibility of a new beginning. This was my life, my story, and I was ready to write the next chapter, one filled with hope, healing, and maybe, just maybe, happiness again.